Hey YouTube, I'm Smiling Skeptic, back with another video again. This one's for DawahFilms, or Ali if I may call you that. I promised you this video a little earlier in the week, but well, it's been a pretty shit week for me, and anyway, here it is. I've been talking all day, so my voice is a little bit tired too, so I'm just gonna wet my whistle a little bit. There we go. Alright, your videos are very disappointing, Ali. You claim to be a moderate Muslim with progressive views. A kinder, gentler Muslim, as it were. But then you make a video trying to explain how a 50-plus-year-old man having sex with a child is really okay. I had written a much more complex script, but the points I wanted to touch on have been made in other videos, mostly in the Klingshore Snowwalker 1 collaboration made in response to someone else's video. And if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's pretty solid. I'll put links below and in this annotation right here. Alright, I'll just mention a few points here. You seem to be making a lot of follow-up videos recently in which you have to clarify your positions and statements on things. Your attitude in these videos suggests that it's the fault of the audience that they can't or won't buy what you're selling, as if we're being deliberately obtuse or just ridiculously stupid. Maybe some of us are, but there are more of us who are actually trying to understand what you're saying, and it's not working. It doesn't help your case for clarity when you do things, as I mentioned already in your comments section. You start this video that I'm replying to with the straw man argument.
This video will be about a most contentious issue related to the teachings of Islam and the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. The common accusation you hear these days against the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and Muslims is that we all endorse or practice pedophilia. What I hope to prove is that neither is the case.
You then claimed in response to my comment that the video was not about that. You've already uploaded an edited version of the video, and the straw man is still there. I only mention this in case you decide to make a third version of the video, just so you can make your video a little bit clearer. Then, before you even begin to address your argument, you insult the viewer who you claim to be trying to convince. At the same time, you try to set up an out for yourself by suggesting that anyone who voices an objection to your opinions is simply issuing an emotional, childish, knee-jerk reaction and not listening to your apologetics, or doesn't have a high enough intelligence to converse with you. If you really want to convince your audience, don't disrespect your audience. Because otherwise what you're doing is just disingenuous preaching to the choir, and you're not trying to talk to us at all. I only offer this advice because I get the impression you're going to be making more films in your self-assumed mission to educate the world in the wonders of Islam, and if you expect to be effective at all, you have to change your manner. I know your dusty book tells you that you don't have to treat unbelievers with respect, but you really should ignore that advice. Part of putting forth an opinion in a public forum includes the acceptance of the possibility that you may be wrong. Never at any point do you give any indication of this kind of humility. In fact, you challenge people to disprove you, brashly stating in the challenge that such a feat is impossible. This is a tactic worthy of Nephilim Freeze style of discussion. You see how much of an idiot he is. Do you really want to be put in that same category? That cocksureness and the insults, the automatic dismissal of dissenters before you even present your case, these are not the elements of a well-constructed case, Ali. Now, on the specifics, I'll only make one comment further to the Klingshore Snowwalker 1 video. The paper you cite on the ages of puberty over time is a meta-study, and really is the presentation of a hypothesis, not a fact. The two who collaborated on the paper pulled their data from other studies, sometimes on other topics, and came up with this hypothesis. Now, there are certain procedural concerns with meta-studies, and it has to do with the collection of data. Biases from studies on other subjects could skew the data, and so on. But we won't get into all that. Let's assume for this discussion that the data sets are largely unbiased. So they drew upon data to form a hypothesis, and published this hypothesis. From here, their peers would pick up on this and do their own research, which would serve to confirm or deny the hypothesis. The paper was published 5 years ago. I could find no follow-up research anywhere. So you begin by basing your argument on basically an unsupported proposition, presenting it as a scientific certainty. Really, what we find about the onset of puberty is that it is impacted severely by several factors, not just evolution. For girls, body fat percentage seems to be one major trigger. Olympic athletes, and we see this most commonly in the gymnasts, often appear prepubescent even up to the age of 16. That's because they are prepubescent. These athletes don't go through puberty until they are all done competition. This is because their training regimen simply doesn't allow for the accumulation of body fat that has been determined to be one of the triggers for puberty. That's just one example of the many factors that have been shown to affect the onset of the physical changes of puberty. We don't even have to touch on the mental aspects for right now. Hypotheses should be treated carefully. Ask Andrew Wakefield about that. But that's it for the specifics. I feel you're giving the paper far too much weight to make it the basis of your argument. Now, a comment on the overarching argument in the video. At the end of the day, you still have a story of a 50-plus-year-old man having sex with a child, who Muslim scholars a lot smarter than you have determined that in all likelihood she was prepubescent, and by anyone's standards, outside the Islamic nations that is, not fit for marriage, or certainly the consummation of that marriage. All the apologetics in the world and redefinitions of words and reimaginings of what's acceptable and reinterpretations of already accepted interpretations of ancient texts doesn't change the fact that Mohammedans view the Prophet as the most perfect or divine man who ever existed, and that his examples should be emulated even today, which means that his examples should be timeless. They should be acceptable to any generation. They shouldn't require these acrobatics of apologetics that you're doing, and yet we find, and not only in this case, that these examples are not timeless unless you live in the Muslim world. Now, if you want to go on claiming that Muhammad was the most perfect man who ever existed and his examples should be emulated, observed, and respected today, you're going to encounter opposition on this from the whole of the civilized world. Get used to it. We aren't going to accept kiddie rape just because you made a video trying to explain it away. If you chose Islam, and yes, I know you chose Islam, to be part of a modern religion of peace and progression and tolerance, you made a poor choice, Ali. But that's all right. We all make poor choices. The important thing is what you do when you realize you've made a poor choice. I'm Smiling Skeptic. Be excellent to each other, and peace. But